Thank you all very, very much. I want to thank Chris for that very generous introduction. Let me tell you, Chris and the entire team at the NRA do a phenomenal job for all of us. I was privileged to first meet Chris in 2004 when I was elected to Congress. Let's give Chris and the team at the NRA another great round of applause for what they do to protect our rights. You know, I also want to say another great word for Paul Ryan. I got to meet him, I got to know Paul when I was in Congress. Now, I only lasted in Congress for about 3 years. He was one of the few guys I actually enjoyed getting to meet and know about. He was one of the few guys I actually enjoyed getting to meet and know in Congress. The thing that I enjoyed about Paul is this, is that when he finds an issue that he believes is right, he provides real leadership. He doesn't just follow the polls, he doesn't just follow the crowds, he does what he knows is right. Let's give Paul Ryan another great round of applause for his service and leadership to us. You know, maybe Congress would be better if more of them left after 3 years like I did. It might be a better place. Third and last person I want to thank, we're here in the great state of Texas, one of my best friends and just a great governor for the entire country, a great conservative leader. Rick Perry has done a phenomenal job here in Texas. I want to tell you all just a quick story about Rick. Not many people know this story, and I think it just shows you the kind of great conservative leader he is. We have a lot of fun. I got to see him earlier today. We compete for jobs all the time. He's a great neighbor. We're always bragging about our states. I want to tell you something about the people of Texas. Saturday night before Gustav hit our state, 2008, my first year as governor. It was a bad storm. I had to cancel. I was supposed to speak at the RNC convention. I had to cancel that appearance because the storm was so bad it was coming directly at us. Well, I remember that Saturday night, FEMA had promised to send some ambulances, and they didn't send the ambulances they had promised. We were running out of time. We had to evacuate New Orleans, had to get people out of the hospitals and out of the nursing homes. Everybody remembered what happened with Katrina and Rita. We wanted to make sure we got people to safety. We were running out of time. By Sunday, the winds were going to close down the airport. The roads were already closed. We'd already done the mandatory evacuations. Running out of time, I called on Saturday night to Rick Perry. I said, the Texas Air National Guard has 6 specially medically equipped planes. We need those planes in New Orleans. We've got to get our people out of harm's way. And you know, during a hurricane, during a crisis, there are a lot of people that will tell you, well, let me go ask permission. Let me go check the paperwork. Let me see if the federal government will let me do that. Not Rick Perry. He said, Bobby, you've got every plane that I have, you've got every soldier that I have, you've got whatever you need to get those people out of harm's way. On Sunday morning, we started a medical convoy. We had planes from as far away from Canada, from the entire Northern Command coming to New Orleans to evacuate our people. We got every person out right before they shut down that airport. The very first planes, most beautiful sight I ever saw that morning was those planes coming in from Texas to pick up those patients out of those ambulances. So to the people of Texas, thank you for being such great neighbors to our west. Now, we're all here today to talk about American values. For me, that starts with something my father used to teach my brother and me every day. You know, Mark Twain said it best. He said, the older you get, the smarter your parents become. And it's true. I used to think my dad didn't know a whole lot, and now I've got 3 children of my own, and I understand what he was trying to teach us. But every single day, my dad used to tell my brother and me, sons, you should be grateful that you live in America. He said, you should give thanks to God every day that you are blessed to live in the greatest and the freest country in the entire world. You know, my dad said a lot of things, and like a lot of little kids, sometimes you roll your eyes when your dad, your mom try to teach you those things. But my dad was exactly right. We are blessed and privileged to be in America. You see, in America, you don't have to wait for the politicians to tell you what to do. You get to pick up your phone, you get to go on your computer, you get to tell the politicians what to do, and you get to make sure that they work for you, that we don't work for them. We see that at work every day in our country. For example, you made it happen when you fought and you beat President Obama's misguided gun control proposals. The reality is a group of senators didn't win that fight. You won that fight for freedom and for America. The members of the NRA are better than any other folks I know at making our voices heard, and our cause of freedom depends on it. You know, freedom isn't just a word in our history books and our dictionaries. In my experience, freedom is something important. See, my parents came to this country 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, in search of the American dream. They came so that my mom could study at LSU, so that my dad could get a good job, so they could raise their family here. My mom was pregnant with me. They didn't know anybody. They didn't have any money, but my dad had the confidence that if you were willing to work hard, you could do great in this country. He literally went through the yellow pages, company by company, calling until he could get a job. They were so poor that when I was born, they went to the hospital, and he agreed to pay the doctor every month until he paid the hospital bill in full. I don't know if you could buy a baby on layaway today. I don't know if that would work today. I asked my dad, I said, what happens if you missed a payment? I mean, do they take the baby back? What do they do? He said, son, you were such a bad little boy. If they had taken you back, I would have missed a payment on purpose just to send you back. But it was a different time. It was a time where you weren't looking for a handout. They didn't come here for government assistance. They came here to get a job. But you know, my family's story didn't start there. My dad, he was one of 9 children. Born and raised in a house that didn't have electricity or running water. Literally was the only one in his family to get past the 5th grade. I know because I've heard these stories every single day of my life. Maybe you've got a dad like that. Well, I remember one day I told him I needed to get an allowance for all the chores I was doing. He asked me instead how much rent I thought I should be paying him to live in his house. You know the type of dad I'm talking about. You know, the type of person that walked uphill going to school and coming back from school. That's how tough they had it. The reason I tell you all this is growing up, my dad would always tell us, he'd say, sons, I'm not going to give you a famous last name. I'm not going to give you an inheritance, but I'm going to give you something much more important than that. Because you were born and raised in America, he said, if you get a great education, if you work hard, there's no limit to what you can accomplish in this great country. And to me, that's the American dream. The dream that each of us has the opportunity to excel if we're willing to work hard to achieve our goals. That shared belief is the core of our country. You won't find the true heart of America in some big building in Washington or in a government proclamation from some politician. You find it in the drive and the convictions of individual Americans who defend freedom every day in their lives. That belief in liberty and the security that freedom endures is at the core of my political philosophy. It's the reason why I've pushed as hard as I can at every turn to protect our Second Amendment rights. You know, now Chris told you about the work we did together to pass that legislation after Katrina to make sure that never again can the federal government confiscate a firearm that protects the freedom of an American during a disaster. I want to tell you about another legislative battle that's taking place in state capitals across our country. Early in my first term as governor, we had another opportunity in front of our legislature when they debated the rights of law-abiding gun owners to have their weapons in their cars or trucks at their workplaces. Now, that debate put 2 of my allies against each other, the NRA on one side and many business groups on the other side in my state. I know a lot of governors have struggled with this debate and wrestled with this choice, but let me tell you something. It wasn't a hard decision for me. I told my friends I would take the side of freedom every single time, and in Louisiana, freedom won. You know, but last year in Louisiana, we did something even more fundamental. We adopted the strongest, most ironclad constitutional protection for law-abiding gun owners in this country. It's our own Second Amendment, if you will, in the state of Louisiana. I don't care what kind of left-wing judges President Obama appoints, he won't be able to touch our freedom to keep and bear arms in the great state of Louisiana. In Louisiana, we are serious about the right to keep and bear arms. Unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., our president is just as serious about eviscerating those rights. For example, he appointed a Supreme Court justice named Sonia Sotomayor who doesn't even believe you have an individual right to own a firearm. I wonder what else she missed in the Bill of Rights. I mean, that one's pretty close to the top, so I wonder when she stopped reading. But it doesn't end there. The president appointed an attorney general who's attacked the Second Amendment from his very first days in office. I was one of the first and few governors in America to call on Eric Holder to submit his resignation during the Fast and Furious scandal and call on the president to demand his resignation. I still have a hard time understanding an administration that says law-abiding Americans shouldn't have guns, but people who break the laws in other countries should. I don't understand that kind of thinking. Some people said I shouldn't do that. They said, Bobby, that's just going to irritate the president. I've got a little bit of experience doing that, by the way, with the oil spill and some other times, too. They said, look, you're not going to accomplish anything. They said that's above your pay grade. Let me tell you something. Defending our fundamental freedoms isn't above anybody's pay grade in America. It is the duty of every one of us. And my commitment to you is I will do it every single time. President Obama's assault on our Second Amendment freedom is one of the primary reasons I opposed his reelection. But let's be honest, it's not the only reason. He is diminishing the economic freedom of every American by raising the debt burden. This president's budgets don't stop borrowing. Not now, not ever. They don't solve our entitlement crisis. Not now, not ever. They don't reduce the size and reach of government. Not now, not ever. This president promised Americans hope and change when he first ran for office. Instead, he has given us borrow and spend. If you look at this president's policies on every issue, from health care to energy, to his budgets, to whatever, one thing is crystal clear. Unlike you and me, he doesn't believe in the transformative and dynamic power of freedom. He doesn't believe we can trust Americans to make smart energy choices. He doesn't believe Americans have a fundamental right to choose the firearm that's best for defending their own homes. He doesn't believe we can trust Americans to make smart health care choices. He doesn't believe we can trust Americans with their own money, which is why he's trying to raise taxes yet again, even as we speak. You know, I've never been one to question a president's motives. I believe he wants to be a good president, but he does have a lack of trust. He doesn't trust Americans like you and I trust Americans. He will not succeed until that changes. What I mean is that trusting Americans means that believing in the premise of America, believing in the circumstances of your birth, your last name, your zip code, your gender, your race, don't determine your outcome in this great country. Your own choices, your own decisions determine your outcome in America. And that's why everybody in this room is fighting so hard to defend freedom in America. It's the reason a bunch of men and women, brave men and women, over 236 years ago, broke away from England to found this great nation. It's the reason we must prevail, not just in the next election, but in this great debate. I want to close by leaving you with one final thought. Every great American value, from limited government to religious freedom, to free enterprise, to personal responsibility, to the right to bear arms, is dependent on a people willing to fight for them. I was saying backstage, we are blessed to live in the greatest country in the entire history of the world. But every generation must choose for itself anew to preserve those freedoms that makes us such a great country. Every one of us wants to leave more opportunities to our children than we inherited from our parents. Every generation before us has done exactly that. So now it falls to us to continue that tradition. We must educate our young people, sure, so they can read and write and do math, but also so they understand our history and the principles upon which our great country was founded. I believe that America should remain the greatest country in the world. Now, when I was a kid, it was safe to say that. Unfortunately, because of political correctness, not everybody likes when people talk like that. I'm not talking about one in the family of nations. I'm not saying a great country. I'm saying the greatest country in the history of the world. We need to make it safe to say that once again, proudly and loudly. We're not just one of many nations. We're not just another country. I'm proud that America is exceptional and that our role as a global leader must be cherished. I'm ready to stand and fight for that freedom. I know you're willing to fight for that freedom. I'm asking you to stay in that fight. This is a critical moment for our country. It is up to us to fight for the freedoms our parents left to us. May God bless you. May God bless the NRA. May God bless these United States of America. Thank you for staying in the fight. Thank you all very much.